Yes, I I think it comes from a couple of different sources. Now, probably the first source that I can think of was just how I grew up in the East, in Sri Lanka, which is a very it's a culture in the South Asian culture is very sympathetic to storytelling and thinking in terms of stories. In the West here, we think in terms of ideas, generally speaking, where ideas can be good, can be bad. Maybe what separates you from becoming the person that you want to be is maybe one idea or a set of ideas. But in the East, uh, it's about stories, it's about narratives. So basically, we talk about where did you grow up, who's your father, who's your mother,
Mhm.
what's your social life look like, what's your village, like what are the stories
Mhm.
that your grandmother tells you, what's the story that your grandfather tells you. And so the stories that you are a part of, so the question of, let me backtrack here, the question of what am I to do is secondary to the question of what story or what stories am I a part of.
Mm.
So basically, the idea that I kind of instinctively knew, because this is how my parents and my grandparents grew up, was the stories that you're a part of and the stories that make you you is more important than things that you do, or rather,
Wow.
the stories that you're a part of are the things that give purpose and meaning to the things that you do. So that was, again, at the time I did not know that language, but now looking back, hindsight is 2020. This is kind of what I feel like that I can think about right now. So that's definitely a part of it. Then, then over then another thing that I've seen happening when I've started sharing stories is that when you combine your art with your story, or with sense of or set of stories, it builds trust. So if you think of it
Mm.
like a mathematical equation, art plus story equals trust. So your art can be anything. Like for me, the art is making chai, or maybe it's making videos or writing a piece of poetry or whatever it is. But for somebody else, their art can be underwater basket weaving or podcasting or whatever it is. So you can come up with making rotis, whatever it is. That's your art.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got me
exactly.
excited. Yeah, I'm back.
Exactly. So when you combine that with a narrative, with a story, what it does is, from the viewer standpoint, when they see that, I'm like, oh, okay, they will also find, no matter who they are, no matter what culture they're from, even if they're different, even if they have a different cultural background than you, they can, more often than not, they'll find resonating aspects and components in your story that they can relate to. They can be like, oh wow, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, whoa, I didn't know that you also went through this. That's amazing. So a core part of my content was, I would make tea, for example, and then I would share a story, as kind of a voiceover over the content that I just shared. And so that's how a lot of community was built. And a lot of comments were like, wow, I thought, I wish I had heard this when I was 18 years old. Like, I wish I heard
Yeah.
this. I wish my son would hear this. So this is so
Mhm.
good. Like, this gives me language for some things that I did not realize I went through and experienced that. So yeah, so stories have built trust. And at the end of the day, when it comes to building any type of audience, when it comes to building some revenue streams through your community or whatever it is, the most valuable currency you have is trust. At least for me, like, I think it's, if people don't trust you,
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
don't really connect with you emotionally, like if there's no sense of feeling, if there's no hard connection between you and the person that you're listening to, it's going to be very, very difficult to do things like monetizing and even expand and things like that. So yeah, so those are a couple of things as to why, like, storytelling is, I think, very, very important for me, at
I
least.